The ocean raged against the Stormhaven shoreline, clawing at the sand with foaming fingers. Rain slashed down in silver sheets as lightning split the sky. It was the kind of storm that came only once a decade, the locals said, the kind that carried secrets in its howl. Michael Sullivan gripped the steering wheel of his patrol SUV tighter as it slid on the flooded coastal road. At 45, the former Navy SEAL turned senior detective still had the build of a man who challenged himself daily, though the years had etched lines around his eyes and streaked silver through his dark hair. The radio crackled with storm warnings and evacuation orders, but Mike had one last stretch of beach to check before heading back. The headlights caught something impossible through the curtain of rain, a flash of pink fabric against the sand dangerously close to the surging tide. "What the hell?" Mike slammed on the brakes, the vehicle skidding to a halt. Squinting through the downpour, he made out a small figure lying motionless on the beach. A child, and beside it something smaller. Mike was out of the car before conscious thought, the rain instantly soaking him to the skin. The wind howled like a living thing as he sprinted across the wet sand. The tide was coming in fast, hungry waves already licking at the small form. It was a little girl no more than 7 years old. Her pale pink shirt was torn and soaked, her dark hair tangled with seaweed. Beside her lay a newborn baby wrapped in what looked like a torn piece of blanket. Both children were deathly still. Mike dropped to his knees, checking for pulses with practiced fingers. The baby's heartbeat fluttered, weak but present. The girl's pulse was stronger, but her skin was cold. Too cold. A massive wave crashed nearby, spraying them with foam. The next one would reach them. "Hang on," Mike growled, gathering both children into his arms. He stood just as a wave surged forward, the water rising to his knees with violent force, threatening to drag them all under. For a moment, he was back in Yemen, carrying a wounded teammate through floodwaters while enemy fire rained down. The memory brought the same steel to his spine. He fought the pull of the ocean, each step a battle against nature itself. The baby felt impossibly light against his chest, while the girl's weight dragged at his other arm. The tide surged again, nearly taking his legs out from under him. Mike roared against the storm, a primal sound of defiance that was swallowed by thunder. Finally, he reached the patrol car, laying the children carefully across the back seat. The heater blasted as he radioed dispatch. "This is Sullivan. I've got 2 minors, female, approximately 7 years old, male infant, both hypothermic and unconscious. Need immediate medical at the south end of Stormhaven Beach." As he waited for the ambulance, Mike wrapped his jacket around the children. The girl's eyelids fluttered, then opened to reveal hazel eyes clouded with fear. "You're safe now," Mike said, his gruff voice gentling. "I've got you." The girl's lips trembled as she whispered, "He said the sea would never give back its secrets." Then her eyes rolled back and she went limp in his arms. Mike felt a chill that had nothing to do with his soaked clothes. In 20 years of law enforcement, he'd developed an instinct for cases that would change everything. As he held these 2 abandoned children watching lightning flash over the violent sea, that instinct screamed at him. This wasn't an accident. This was just the beginning. Stormhaven General Hospital hummed with the controlled chaos of any medical facility during a crisis. The storm had caused power outages across the county, and the emergency generators cast everything in a harsh, unnatural light that made Mike's wet clothes appear almost black. He stood outside the pediatric exam room, watching through the window as doctors worked on the 2 children he'd pulled from the sea. His body felt heavy with exhaustion, but his mind refused rest. The girl's whispered words kept replaying in his head. The sea would never give back its secrets. Mike ran a hand over his face, feeling the familiar ridge of the scar that cut across his left cheek, a parting gift from his final SEAL mission. That mission had cost him 3 teammates and left him with nightmares that still woke him some nights, gasping for air. "Detective Sullivan." He turned to see Dr. Catherine Harrison approaching. At 40, Kate had the focused intensity of someone who'd seen too much tragedy and channeled it into purpose. Her auburn hair was tied back in a practical knot, and behind her glasses, her brown eyes held equal parts compassion and determination. As the hospital's lead pediatric trauma specialist, she was exactly who these kids needed. "How are they?" Mike asked. "The baby, we're calling him Noah for now, is stabilized. Severe hypothermia, some dehydration, but he's responding well." Kate's expression softened. "He's a fighter." "And the girl, her name is Emma. She's been in and out of consciousness." "No identification on either of them." Kate hesitated. Mike, there's something you need to see. She led him into a small consultation room and closed the door. From her pocket, she withdrew her phone and pulled up a photo. I found this on Emma's wrist. It was hidden under a bracelet of shells. The image showed a small burn mark on the inside of the child's wrist, a perfectly formed five-pointed star. A brand. Mike felt his stomach tighten. Yes, and I've seen it before. Kate's voice dropped. It's the symbol of the Starlight Foundation. The name hung in the air between them. Everyone in Stormhaven knew the Starlight Foundation, a prestigious charity for orphaned and at-risk children, founded by Richard Blackwood, one of the wealthiest men on the eastern seaboard. After losing his wife to cancer 5 years ago, Blackwood had poured millions into children's causes, becoming the town's most celebrated philanthropist. You think Blackwood is involved in this? Mike kept his voice neutral, but his mind was already racing through implications. I don't know, but that mark wasn't an accident. Kate met his gaze steadily. And there's something else. When Emma was being examined, she became agitated and said something unusual. What? Noah isn't my brother, Kate quoted, but I have to protect him. They were going to sell him. The words landed like stones in still water ripples of meaning expanding outward. Mike's jaw tightened. I need to talk to her. She's resting now. Tomorrow morning would be better. Kate placed a hand on his arm. Mike, this could be serious. If what she's implying is true. I know. He looked down at her hand, then back to her face. I'll come back first thing tomorrow. As he turned to leave, Kate called after him. Mike, there's something familiar about you to her. When I mentioned a detective wanted to talk to her, she asked if you were the man with the scar. She seemed relieved when I said yes. Mike touched his cheek automatically. I've never seen her before in my life. Maybe not, but she seems to know you. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle by the time Mike left the hospital. He sat in his car for a long moment, watching water stream down the windshield, distorting the world outside. He pulled out his phone and stared at the home screen, a photo of a smiling woman with warm eyes and chestnut hair. Rebecca, his wife of 20 years gone for 2. The accident had been sudden. A rainy night, a truck that crossed the center line. By the time Mike arrived at the hospital, Rebecca was already gone. What he hadn't known until weeks later was that she'd been on her way to meet with a divorce lawyer. The painful truth had come in the form of an appointment card found in her purse, a consultation she would never keep. Their marriage had been failing for years, worn down by his absences, his dedication to the job, his inability to leave the darkness of his work at the door. Their son, Jason, now 21 and away at college, had never forgiven him. Not for his mother's death, which wasn't Mike's fault, but for all the years before the missed baseball games, the empty chair at dinner, the father who was physically present but mentally elsewhere. Mike tried calling Jason now, knowing what the response would be. After 4 rings, the call went to voicemail. It's Dad, just checking in. Call me when you can. He ended the call knowing Jason wouldn't return it. His son's silence had become another kind of weather in his life, a constant condition he'd learned to live within, but never get used to. Mike drove home to his beachfront cottage, a place that had once been a weekend retreat, but now served as his permanent residence after selling the family home. It was small but faced the ocean, giving him an unobstructed view of the endless horizon. On clear days, it brought peace. On stormy nights like this, it reminded him of how vast the world's darkness could be. Inside, he poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon and stood at the window. The lighthouse at the northern end of the bay swept its beam across the turbulent waters in steady, predictable rotations. In the distance, thunder still rumbled, but the worst of the storm had passed offshore. Yet Mike couldn't shake the feeling that a different kind of storm was just beginning. The Starlight Foundation occupied a renovated Victorian mansion in the heart of downtown Stormhaven. Its white columns and blue trim gave it an appropriately celestial appearance, while the sprawling gardens featured sculptures of children reaching for the stars. A banner across the entrance announced an upcoming gala, Reaching for the Stars, celebrating 10 years of changing children's lives. Mike had called Allison Carter, the county prosecutor, to accompany him. At 35, Allison had a reputation for ruthless efficiency and political ambition. Her blonde hair was cut in a sharp bob that framed a face more striking than beautiful, and her pantsuit was tailored to project authority. She and Mike had worked dozens of cases together with a professional relationship marked by mutual respect and underlying tension. You think a charity is trafficking children? Allison's tone made her skepticism clear as they walked up the stone path to the entrance. Based on a burn mark and the ramblings of a traumatized child, I think two kids nearly drowned on my beach, and one of them has the foundation symbol burned into her skin, Mike replied evenly. I think that deserves questions. Just remember who we're talking to. Blackwood donated $500,000 to the new children's wing at the hospital. He funds the annual police charity ball. He's not some back alley criminal. The worst ones never look the part. The receptionist recognized both of them immediately and led them to Richard Blackwood's office without delay. The space was designed to impress floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay walls decorated with framed thank you letters from children and awards for humanitarian work. Behind an imposing mahogany desk sat the man himself. At 60, Richard Blackwood still cut an impressive figure. Tall and lean with silver hair and penetrating blue eyes, he moved with the confidence of a man accustomed to power. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced to perfect warmth. Detective Sullivan, Ms. Carter, what brings Stormhaven's finest to my humble foundation? His voice carried the polished accent of old money, each word precisely chosen. We're investigating an incident from last night, Mike said. Two children were found abandoned on the beach during the storm, a girl named Emma and an infant boy. Blackwood's expression shifted to appropriate concern. How terrible. Are the children all right? They'll recover. The girl had something interesting on her wrist, a burn mark in the shape of a star. Mike watched Blackwood's face carefully. Your foundation's star, to be precise. If Blackwood was alarmed, he didn't show it. His frown seemed genuinely troubled. That's disturbing news. We certainly don't brand children detective. He moved to a filing cabinet, removing a folder. However, we do give these to children in our programs. He handed Mike a photograph showing a child wearing a bracelet with a star-shaped charm. It's possible the mark could have come from one of these if it was pressed against the skin during the storm. Was the bracelet still on her wrist? No, Mike admitted. Just shells. I see. Blackwood returned to his desk. We can check our records. What did you say the girl's name was? Emma. No last name yet. 7 years old, dark hair, hazel eyes. Blackwood tapped at his computer brow, furrowed in concentration. We've had several Emmas in our programs over the years. Without more information, he looked up. I'll have my staff conduct a thorough search. If she was one of our children, we'll find out. The conversation continued with Blackwood offering appropriate levels of concern and cooperation. Yet something about the man raised Mike's instincts. Perhaps it was the way his eyes never quite matched his concerned expressions, or how his gaze occasionally darted to the elegant wall clock, as if counting the minutes until they would leave. As they prepared to depart, the office door opened. Mayor Wilson entered, then stopped short at seeing the detective and prosecutor. Mike Allison, I didn't expect to see you here. The mayor's surprise quickly shifted to a politician's smile. At 55, Wilson had the polished appearance of a man who knew the value of a good camera angle. Just following up on a case, sir, Allison replied smoothly. Nothing to be concerned about. Richard and I have foundation business, Wilson explained unnecessarily. The annual gala planning. Mike nodded, noting how Allison seemed unusually deferential around the mayor. As they left, he glanced back to see Blackwood and Wilson in close conversation, the mayor's hand on the philanthropist's shoulder. He seems awfully cozy with Blackwood, Mike observed as they reached the car. Allison's smile was tight. The foundation donated generously to his re-election campaign, and mine for that matter. That bother you? Politics requires funding, Mike. Not everyone can afford your moral high ground. The comment stung precisely because it contained a kernel of truth. Mike's refusal to play politics had cost him promotions over the years. He still held the rank of detective, while younger, more politically savvy officers had moved above him. I'll check hospital records, Mike said, changing the subject. See if Emma has any history there. And I'll have filed the preliminary report. But Mike, Allison's voice cooled. Thread carefully around Blackwood. Without concrete evidence, accusations against someone of his stature would be career suicide. The warning was clear. Mike watched her walk to her own car, wondering when Allison had become more politician than prosecutor. Back at the station, Mike pulled the records for missing children in the Tri-County area. None matched Emma's description. He expanded the search statewide, then nationally. The computer hummed as it processed the request. While waiting, he examined the photo Kate had sent of the star-shaped mark. It was too uniform, too perfectly formed to be accidental. No charm pressed against skin during a struggle would leave such a precise impression. The search results appeared on screen, no matches for Emma's description in active missing persons cases. It was as if the child had never existed before washing up on that beach. Mike leaned back, rubbing his eyes. His gaze fell on a framed newspaper clipping on his office wall, his one moment of public recognition. The headline read, "Local Detective Rescues Kidnapped Children." The article detailed how Mike had tracked down a child trafficking ring 5 years ago, saving 3 children being transported across state lines. What the article didn't mention was the fourth child, a boy named Danny, just 6 years old. By the time Mike found him hidden in a separate location, it was too late. The memory still haunted him, especially Danny's age. He would have been around Emma's age now if he had lived. The phone on his desk rang, pulling him from the dark memory. "Sullivan?" "Mike, it's Kate. Emma's awake and asking for you, Tim." Her voice carried an urgency that made him sit straighter. "She's been drawing something I think you should see." 30 minutes later, Mike stood in Emma's hospital room looking down at a drawing made with colored pencils. It showed a large gray house perched on a cliff beside a lighthouse. In the bottom of the house, stick figures were drawn behind what looked like bars. "That's where they kept us," Emma said quietly. Her voice was small but steady. "The house by the lighthouse." Mike knelt beside her bed. "Who kept you there, Emma?" "The bad man, the one who likes when people cry." "Was your mother with you there?" Emma nodded, eyes glistening. "Mommy is still there, in the room with no windows." A tear slid down her cheek. "She told me to run when the door wasn't locked, to take Noah and run." "Who is Noah to you, Emma?" The little girl looked at the baby sleeping in the nearby bassinet. "He isn't my brother. He's special. That's why they want him back so badly." "Who wants him back?" Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. "The people who buy babies." The statement hung in the air like smoke. Mike kept his expression neutral, despite the rage building inside him. "Emma, do you know a man named Richard Blackwood?" The change was immediate. Emma's eyes widened with terror, her small body tensing as if preparing to flee. She shook her head violently. "Don't say his name," she whispered. "He'll hear you." "He can't hurt you anymore," Mike assured her. "You're safe here." Emma looked unconvinced. "That's what Mommy thought too." Mike showed her a photo of Blackwood from the Foundation's website. Emma's reaction confirmed everything. She shrank back against the pillows, turning her face away. "Can you tell me about this?" Mike gently touched the star-shaped mark on her wrist. Emma stared at it with hatred. "They do it to all the kids, so everyone knows who we belong to." Her small fingers traced the scar. "It means we're stars, but not the kind in the sky. The kind people pay to watch." The implication turned Mike's stomach. He'd seen enough human trafficking images to understand what she meant. "Emma, I promise you I'm going to find your mom and help her too. But I need you to tell me everything you can remember about the house." The girl's description was detailed despite her age: a 3-story house on the northern cliffs with a view of the lighthouse. A basement with rooms that locked from the outside. Women who cried at night. Men who came to look at the merchandise. As she spoke, Mike recognized the location she was describing. Everyone in Stormhaven knew Cliffhaven Blackwood's private estate perched on the northern point, a sprawling mansion visible from the beach on clear days. After Emma finally fell asleep exhausted from the interview, Mike found Kate waiting outside. "She's describing Blackwood's private residence," he said quietly. Kate's face paled. "You think he's running some kind of trafficking operation right here in Stormhaven?" "I think we need to find out, but carefully. Blackwood has connections throughout the town, including with your boss and mine." "What's the next step?" "I need to see what records exist for Emma and Noah, birth certificates, medical history, anything. And I need to find out who Emma's mother is." Kate hesitated, then pulled him into an empty consultation room. "There's something else. When I was examining Noah, I noticed something unusual. His blood type doesn't match the typical patterns for a random child. He has a rare phenotype that's usually hereditary, meaning like, meaning I think he might have been specifically conceived, possibly as some kind of product. The implication hung between them. Designer babies, black market surrogacy. The possibilities were all horrifying. I'll run his DNA through the system, see if there are any matches, Mike said, but keep this quiet for now. As Mike headed toward the exit, his phone buzzed with a text from his boss, Chief Barnes. My office tomorrow, 8 a.m., regarding your Blackwood inquiry. Word traveled fast in Stormhaven. Too fast. Mike pocketed his phone and stepped outside into the night air. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sky scattered with stars in the distant sweep of the lighthouse beam. He looked toward the northern cliffs, where Cliff Haven stood dark and imposing against the night sky. If what Emma suggested was true, one of the town's most respected citizens was orchestrating unimaginable horrors. And Mike had just placed himself directly in the crosshairs. The meeting with Chief Barnes went exactly as expected. You're investigating Richard Blackwood based on the ramblings of a traumatized child. Barnes was a career administrator, his once fit frame now softened by years behind a desk. Do you have any idea the kind of backlash this could cause? I have a child with an unexplained brand matching Blackwood's foundation logo, Mike countered. I have her testimony about a trafficking operation. That's enough for a preliminary investigation. It's not enough to go after the most powerful man in town. Blackwood's lawyers would bury us before we got through the front door. Barnes sighed heavily. Look, Mike, I know you've been different since Rebecca died. Maybe you're seeing this as some kind of redemption story. This has nothing to do with Rebecca, doesn't it? You couldn't save her. You couldn't save that boy 5 years ago. Now here's another child who needs saving. Barnes's voice softened. I get it, but you're letting your personal feelings cloud your judgment. Mike felt his jaw tighten. Sir, with respect, this is a legitimate case. It's a legitimate case when I say it is. Barnes slid a folder across the desk. The girl and the baby are being released to social services this afternoon. Blackwood's foundation has offered to provide temporary housing until their family can be located. Case closed. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious. Drop it, Sullivan. That's an order. Mike left the station with the kind of cold rage that had once fueled him through the worst SEAL missions. Back in his car, he called Kate immediately. They're releasing Emma and Noah to Blackwood's foundation, he said without preamble. What? No, that can't happen. Kate's alarm matched his own. Emma was terrified just seeing his picture. And if what she said about Noah is true, I know, we need to keep them away from Blackwood. But Barnes has shut down the investigation. I can't move officially. There was a moment of silence on the line. So we move unofficially. The words hung between them, a line in the sand, a point of no return. Once crossed, their careers, possibly their freedom would be at risk. Kate, I can't ask you to risk your job. You're not asking. I'm offering. Her voice hardened with resolve. I've spent 15 years treating children who've been through hell. I won't deliver 2 more back to the devil. Mike felt something shift inside him, the first stirring of purpose he'd felt since Rebecca died. Meet me at the hospital in 20 minutes. We need a plan. As he drove, Mike's mind raced through possibilities. He knew what he was risking: his badge, his pension, possibly his freedom. But the alternative was unthinkable, returning those children to the very monster they had escaped. At a red light, Mike found himself looking at the photo of Rebecca on his dashboard. What would she think of what he was about to do? The woman who had finally given up on their marriage because he couldn't leave the job behind, couldn't stop carrying the weight of other people's tragedies. I'm sorry, Becca, he whispered to the empty car, but I can't walk away from this one. The light turned green and Mike accelerated toward the hospital, toward a decision that would change everything. Emma was drawing again when Mike entered her hospital room. This time the picture showed a little girl holding a baby standing beside a tall man with a line across his face. In the background loomed the house on the cliff, dark clouds gathered above it. Is that me? Mike asked, pointing to the tall figure. Emma nodded without looking up. Mommy said if I was ever in trouble, I should find the man with the scar. She finally raised her eyes to his. She said you saved other kids before, that you would help us too. Mike felt his throat tighten. Your mom knows me. She has your picture. She cut it from a newspaper about the other kids you saved. The article about the trafficking case. Somehow Emma's mother had seen it, had kept it as a lifeline for her daughter. Emma, who is your mother? What's her name? Laura Miller. She worked at the hotel before the bad man took her. Emma's small hand reached for his. Are you going to save her too? The trust in those hazel eyes hit Mike like a physical blow. This child had endured horrors he could scarcely imagine, had fought her way to freedom with an infant in her arms, all on the strength of her mother's faith that a stranger with a scarred face would help them. Yes, Mike said, the word feeling like a vow. I'm going to save her too. Emma studied his face for a long moment, then nodded as if confirming something to herself. The people from the Star Place came this morning. They said they were taking me and Noah later today. That's not going to happen. Promise? Her voice was small, but her eyes held a wisdom beyond her years. I promise. No one is taking you back there. Not ever. Mike left the room to find Kate waiting in the corridor. Her expression told him she'd heard everything. Laura Miller, she said quietly. I can check employment records for local hotels. Do it, and we need to move fast. Blackwood's people are coming for them today. I've got a plan. Kate led him to a quiet corner of the hospital. I'm going to register Emma as needing additional psychiatric evaluation. That will delay her release for at least 48 hours. It will give us time to find concrete evidence. And Noah? That's trickier. As an infant without identification, he falls under different protocols. Kate lowered her voice. But I know someone in neonatal who can help us delay the paperwork. Mike nodded, relief and tension warring within him. We need to find Laura Miller. If she can testify, if she's still alive, Kate amended gently. The reality of what they were facing settled between them, not just the possibility of career suicide, but genuine danger. If Blackwood was involved in trafficking, he wouldn't hesitate to eliminate threats. Mike's phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown. Sullivan. Detective. The voice was male, elderly, rough with age or illness. We need to talk about Richard Blackwood. Who is this? Someone who tried to stop him 5 years ago and failed. My name is Samuel Winters. I used to be a detective in this town before Blackwood ruined me. A harsh cough interrupted him. I hear you found one of his stars on the beach. Mike tensed. How do you know about that? I still have friends in the department. Meet me at the old lighthouse keeper's cottage. 1 hour. The line went dead. Kate watched his face. What is it? Possibly an ally or a trap. Mike checked his watch. I need to go. Can you stay with Emma? Make sure no one from Starlight gets near her. Kate nodded. Be careful, Mike. If what Emma's saying is true, we're dealing with people who make children disappear. As Mike headed for the exit, he passed the nursery where Noah slept. The infant looked impossibly small and vulnerable beneath the monitoring equipment. What kind of world produced people who would traffic in such innocence, and what kind of man had he become that he had to ask outside the hospital? Mike paused to look toward the northern cliffs. The lighthouse stood stark against the blue sky, its beam unnecessary in daylight, but still rotating out of habit. Beside it, partly obscured by trees, the dark silhouette of Cliff Haven loomed like a malevolent shadow. Somewhere in that house, if Emma was telling the truth, Laura Miller was being held prisoner. A mother who had trusted in a stranger with a scarred face to save her children. Mike touched the ridge of his scar and made a silent promise. This time he wouldn't fail. Not the children, not their mother, not himself. The storm had passed, but a different kind of darkness was gathering. And Michael Sullivan was walking straight into its heart. The lighthouse keeper's cottage stood weathered and gray against the afternoon sky. Once the proud Sentinel's home, it had been abandoned decades ago when the lighthouse operations became automated. Now it crouched low on the northern edge of Storm Haven, half hidden by overgrown seagrass and forgotten by most of the town. Mike approached cautiously, one hand resting near his service weapon. 20 years as a detective had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now they were sending conflicting signals. The cottage seemed empty, with no vehicles parked nearby and no signs of recent habitation. Yet something about the stillness felt deliberate rather than abandoned. The front door creaked open at his touch. Inside the cottage was surprisingly clean, despite its external decay. Faded nautical maps lined the walls alongside newspaper clippings yellowed with age. A single lamp cast a weak glow over a round table where an elderly man sat waiting. Samuel Winters looked like a man who had battled his way toward death for a long time but refused to complete the journey. His frame was gaunt skin stretched thin over sharp bones, but his eyes burned with fierce intelligence. The oxygen tank beside him hissed quietly, the tube running to his nostrils, the only concession to his failing body. "You took your time, Sullivan," Winters said, his voice stronger in person than it had been on the phone. "But then I've been waiting 5 years for someone like you to come along." Mike remained standing, keeping tactical distance. "You said you know about Blackwood." Winters gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit. This isn't a story told standing up." Mike hesitated, then complied. On the table between them lay a thick file folder, its edges worn smooth with handling. "I was a detective in this town for 30 years, Winters began. "The last case I worked was an investigation into missing children. 3 kids disappeared within 6 months. All had connections to Blackwood's Starlight Foundation." He tapped the folder with one bony finger. "I tracked them to Cliff Haven, had evidence of a trafficking operation, was ready to make the biggest bust of my career." "What happened?" A bitter smile crossed Winter's face. "The night before the raid, my house was broken into. All my evidence disappeared. The next morning, Internal Affairs was waiting with allegations of evidence tampering and witness intimidation. My wife received photographs of me with a woman I'd never met doctored to suggest an affair. My retirement fund mysteriously lost half its value overnight." He drew a labored breath from the oxygen. 3 days later, I was forced to resign in disgrace. "And the missing children? Never found. Case closed due to lack of evidence. 1 week later, Mayor Wilson announced Blackwood's $1 million donation to renovate the police station." Winter's eyes narrowed. "You found one of his stars, didn't you? A child with his brand." Mike studied the old detective, weighing how much to reveal. The man before him had the hollow look of someone who had lost everything to pursuit of the truth. That made him either the perfect ally or a dangerous wild card. "A girl named Emma and a baby boy," Mike finally confirmed. "Washed up during the storm. Emma described being held at Cliff Haven along with her mother and other women." "Laura Miller," Winters said, watching Mike's reaction. "Hotel worker, single mother, disappeared 8 months ago." Mike felt his pulse quicken. "How do you know that?" "Because I never stopped watching Blackwood." Winters pushed the file across the table. 7 women have disappeared from this county in the past 3 years. All fit the same profile: young, vulnerable, financially desperate. Most had children. All had some connection to the Starlight Foundation before they vanished. Mike opened the file, finding meticulously organized documentation. Each missing woman had a section complete with photographs, background information, and last known whereabouts. The work was impressive, especially for a disgraced ex-cop with failing health. "You've been investigating on your own all this time. Did you think I'd just roll over and die? That bastard took everything from me." Winter's voice tightened with anger. "My reputation, my pension. My wife couldn't handle the scandal left for her sisters in Arizona. Died 3 years ago without ever speaking to me again." The raw pain in the old man's voice struck a chord in Mike. He thought of his own broken family, of Jason's continued silence, of the empty cottage that had never become a home. "Why contact me now?" Mike asked. "Because unlike every other cop in this godforsaken town, you're actually looking into Blackwood instead of taking his donations." Winters leaned forward, intensity burning through his physical weakness. "And because I don't have much time left. Lung cancer. Doctors give me 3 months tops." Mike met the old detective's gaze. "What do you think Blackwood is doing with these women?" "Something I didn't understand 5 years ago. It's not just child trafficking. It's more elaborate." Winters pulled another folder from beneath the table. "Last year, I managed to hack into the foundation's financial records. Found payments to a specialized fertility clinic in New York. Multiple payments to surrogate agencies. Blackwood isn't just trafficking existing children. He's producing them." The implication chilled Mike to the bone. "Designer babies?" Winters nodded grimly. "For wealthy clients who want children with specific traits: intelligence, appearance, athletic potential, genetic selection, surrogacy, delivered with complete documentation and absolute secrecy. No adoption records, no birth mother to come looking later. A perfect genetically optimized child untraceable to anyone but the new parents. And the women who disappear become unwilling surrogates, held until they deliver, then disposed of. Winter's face hardened. I couldn't prove it then. But if you found one of the children and she can testify, they're trying to get her back. The foundation has filed to take custody of both children. Then you don't have much time. Winters handed Mike a small key. Safe deposit box at First National, number 447. Everything I've gathered over 5 years is there. Birth records that don't match hospital files. Financial transfers to offshore accounts. Enough to start building a case. Mike pocketed the key, his mind already formulating next steps. I need to find Laura Miller. If she's still alive and being held at Cliff Haven, you can't just walk into Blackwood's fortress. The man has private security surveillance systems and half the town's officials in his pocket. Winters coughed violently, reaching for a handkerchief that came away spotted with blood. You need leverage, concrete evidence before you move against him. I can't wait for a warrant while Emma and Noah are at risk. The children are important, but they're just two victims. Blackwood has been doing this for years. Hundreds of children, dozens of women. Winters fixed Mike with an intense stare. You take him down the right way, or you'll fail, like I did, and those kids will disappear forever. Mike's phone buzzed with a text from Kate. Problem at hospital. Come now. He stood gathering the files Winters had provided. I need to go. Thank you for this. Sullivan. Winters called as Mike reached the door. Blackwood isn't the worst of it. He's just the front man. Someone with political connections is protecting him. Someone who ensures the police and judiciary look the other way. Any idea who? Follow the money, it always leads to the truth. Winter's eyes suddenly looked exhausted, the fire banked to embers. Be careful who you trust. In this town, loyalty is purchased, not earned. Mike left the cottage with Winter's warning echoing in his mind. The old detective was right about one thing: taking down someone like Blackwood would require more than just determination. It would need precision, patience, and proof that even his powerful friends couldn't ignore. But the text from Kate suggested time might be running out. The hospital corridor outside Emma's room was filled with tension when Mike arrived. Kate stood with her arms crossed, facing down a well-dressed woman in her 30s, holding a stack of documents. Two uniformed officers flanked the woman, looking uncomfortable with the situation. Detective Sullivan, Kate said with visible relief. This is Ms. Diane Reynolds from the Starlight Foundation. She has court orders for custody transfer of both Emma and Noah. The woman offered a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. Detective, I understand you have taken an interest in these children. I assure you they'll receive the best care at our facility until their family situation is resolved. Mike glanced at the officers, recognizing both as junior patrolmen who would be easy to intimidate with official paperwork. May I see those orders? Reynolds handed him the documents with practiced confidence. The paperwork appeared legitimate at first glance. Emergency custody granted to the Starlight Foundation, signed by Judge Harmon, a name Mike recognized as one of the town's most senior jurists. These seemed to override the medical evaluation period, Dr. Harrison requested, Mike observed calmly. Judge Harmon felt the children's best interests were served by placing them in a stable environment. Immediately, Reynolds replied smoothly. The foundation has state-of-the-art facilities and child psychology specialists. Kate stepped closer to Mike. I've explained that Emma still needs medical observation. She's showing signs of acute trauma response, which our staff psychologists are well equipped to handle, Reynolds countered. Mike looked through the glass at Emma, who sat huddled on her bed watching the adults with undisguised fear. The sheer terror in her eyes as she stared at the Starlight representative solidified his resolve. Officers, Mike addressed the patrolman directly. I need to make a call to verify these orders. Would you step aside with me for a moment? Once out of earshot, Mike lowered his voice. This case involves potential human trafficking. The foundation is under investigation. I need you to delay this transfer while I contact Chief Barnes. The officers exchanged glances. We were told to assist Ms. Reynolds, sir, the taller one said hesitantly. Direct orders from the chief. The confirmation that Barnes was actively facilitating the transfer sent a cold wave of clarity through Mike. The corruption Winters had warned about reached higher than he'd imagined. I understand. But I'm the primary detective on this case, and I'm telling you, there are serious concerns about the safety of these children if transferred to Starlight. The officers looked uncertain, caught between conflicting authorities. Just give me 30 minutes, Mike pressed. That's all I ask. The younger officer nodded slightly. We can wait half an hour, sir. Mike returned to find Kate and Reynolds in tense silence. There's been a complication with the paperwork, he announced. We'll need to delay the transfer temporarily. Reynolds' pleasant facade cracked slightly. These orders are perfectly clear, Detective. Any delay could be considered obstruction. It's hospital policy to verify all custody transfers through our legal department, Kate interjected smoothly, especially in cases involving potential abuse. I've already called them. They'll be here shortly. Reynolds checked her watch, frustration evident beneath her professional demeanor. Very well. I'll wait in the cafeteria, but understand this will be resolved today. She turned to the officers. Please remain here. The children are flight risks. After she departed, Kate pulled Mike into an empty patient room. What's happening? I thought you were getting the investigation approved. It's worse than we thought. Blackwood has the chief in his pocket. Mike quickly summarized his meeting with Winters. Barnes knows exactly what's happening, and he's facilitating it. We can't count on official channels. Kate's face paled. So what do we do? Those court orders are real. They'll take Emma and Noah today, legal department review or not. Mike ran a hand through his hair, mind racing through limited options. We need to get them out. Not just out of the hospital, out of Blackwood's reach entirely. You're talking about violating a court order, kidnapping technically. I'm talking about saving their lives. Mike locked eyes with Kate. Everything points to Blackwood running a baby selling operation. What do you think happens to witnesses once they're back in his control? The unspoken answer hung heavily between them. Kate's professional caution warred visibly with her protective instincts toward the children. I have a cabin, she finally vowed, in the mountains about 3 hours from here. It was my grandfather's. Almost no one knows about it. Mike nodded. We need to move tonight, during shift change when there's confusion and fewer eyes watching. I'm on the night rotation anyway. I can get them out through the service elevator to the staff parking area. Kate's voice strengthened with resolve. But Mike, this crosses a line we can't uncross. Our careers, possibly our freedom. I know. Mike thought of his badge, his pension, the life he'd built in law enforcement. Then he thought of Emma's terrified eyes and Noah's helpless vulnerability. Some lines should be crossed. Kate studied his face for a long moment, then nodded once. I'll pack medical supplies. Emma's still weak, and Noah needs special formula. I'll handle transportation and security. We meet at your cabin by midnight. Mike hesitated. Kate, you should know what you're risking. This could end with prison time. A sad smile touched her lips. I've spent 15 years patching up abused children, then sending them back into a system that often fails them. Sometimes I wonder if I've really helped anyone at all. Her expression hardened with determination. Not this time. This time we're breaking the cycle. Mike left the hospital with renewed purpose, already planning the night's operation. He would need supplies, secure communications weapons. The tactical part of his brain, the SEAL training that never quite faded, clicked into gear, mapping contingencies and escape routes. As he reached his car, his phone rang. The screen showed a number he hadn't seen in months. Jason. Dad. His son's voice sounded uncertain, so unlike the angry young man who had cut him off after Rebecca's funeral. I got your messages. Is everything okay? The normalcy of his son's concern hit Mike with unexpected force. How long had he waited for any contact from Jason? And now it came at the precise moment when everything in his life was about to implode. Jason, it's good to hear your voice. Mike struggled to sound casual. Things are complicated right now with a case, but I'm handling it. You always are. The old resentment colored Jason's tone briefly before he softened. Look, I'm calling because I'm coming home next weekend. Thought maybe we could get dinner or something. The timing was excruciating. By next weekend, Mike would either be a fugitive or under arrest. I'd like that, he said, meaning it more than Jason could possibly understand. Hey, son, I want you to know something. I've made a lot of mistakes, with your mother, with you, but I always thought I was doing the right thing. Dad, what's going on? You sound strange. Nothing, just a tough case. Mike cleared his throat. I love you, Jason. I don't say that enough. The silence stretched long enough that Mike wondered if the connection had dropped. I love you too, Dad, Jason finally responded, confusion evident in his voice. I'll see you next weekend, okay? Yeah, next weekend. The lie felt bitter on Mike's tongue. After ending the call, Mike sat motionless in his car. The cost of what he planned to do was suddenly concrete, unavoidable. He would likely never see his son again, never have the chance to rebuild what they had lost. The reconciliation he had longed for was finally within reach, and he was about to render it impossible. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was he making another catastrophic choice that would cost him everything that mattered? Was he once again putting strangers above his own family? Then he remembered Emma's drawing, the house on the cliff, the figure with the scar she had been told to find. Her mother's desperate faith that Mike would save her children. Some actions were beyond choice. They were obligation duty in its purest form. With newfound resolve, Mike started the car and drove toward his cottage to prepare. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across Stormhaven. In a few hours, darkness would provide the cover they needed, and by dawn, Detective Michael Sullivan would become a fugitive. Kate's cabin was exactly the kind of place people forgot existed. Tucked into a densely wooded hillside 20 miles from the nearest town, it was accessible only by a narrow dirt road that disappeared entirely under snow each winter. The rustic structure had been built by her grandfather in the 1960s and remained largely unchanged: 2 bedrooms, a main living area, with a stone fireplace and a covered porch wrapping around 3 sides. No neighbors, no passing traffic, no reason for anyone to venture this far into the wilderness. The perfect hiding place. Mike arrived first, securing the perimeter and preparing the cabin for habitation. He had stopped at Winter's cottage on the way, finding the old detective eager to help. Winters provided untraceable burner phones, additional cash, and a revolver that couldn't be linked to either of them. You're crossing the Rubicon, Winters had warned. Once you take those kids, there's no going back. Mike had nodded grimly. Sometimes moving forward is the only option. Now he waited, watching the narrow access road through night vision binoculars. Every passing minute increased the anxiety, tightening his chest. The hospital extraction was the riskiest part of their plan. Too many variables, too many potential witnesses. If Kate was caught, if the children were stopped, if anyone reported suspicious activity. Headlights finally appeared in the distance, moving slowly along the rutted path. Mike tensed, hand moving to the weapon at his side, only relaxing when he recognized Kate's SUV. She pulled up beside his vehicle and cut the engine. The back door opened, and Emma stepped out, clutching a small backpack. Kate followed with Noah bundled in her arms. All 3 looked exhausted. Any problems? Mike asked, scanning the darkness behind them. Kate shook her head. Clean escape. I'm officially on a 3-day weekend starting tomorrow. No one will miss me until Monday. And I told that lady I needed to use the bathroom, Emma added with unexpected defiance. Then we went out the special elevator where they take the laundry. Despite the tension, Mike felt a smile tug at his mouth. The kid had spirit. Inside the cabin, Kate settled Noah in a makeshift crib fashioned from a drawer lined with blankets. Emma explored cautiously, like a small animal uncertain of new territory. Are we safe here? She asked, her voice small in the cabin's rustic space. Mike knelt to her eye level. Yes, this place is far away from town and no one knows about it. You and Noah can rest. Emma studied his face with that unnerving intensity. Is my mom safe too? The question pierced Mike's professional armor. He'd been so focused on rescuing the children that the urgency of finding Laura Miller had temporarily receded. I don't know yet, he answered honestly. But I promise you, I'm going to find her. The bad man will hurt her when he finds out we're gone. The simple statement carried horrifying implications. Mike exchanged glances with Kate, who was monitoring Noah's breathing. Emma, can you tell us more about where they keep your mom? Anything that might help us find her. The child sat cross-legged on the worn sofa, her small face serious in the lamplight. She's in the basement rooms, where the other mommies are. They make them carry babies that don't belong to them. Kate moved closer. You mean like Noah? Was he one of those babies? Emma nodded. Noah is special. The man who bought him paid extra for his eyes and for being smart. But then the bad man decided to keep him instead. Her face darkened. He does that sometimes. Keeps the special ones. Mike felt a crawling sense of horror. How many women are there, Emma? In the basement. 6 now. There were 8, but her voice faltered. 2 got sick after their babies came. They went away. The euphemism wasn't lost on either adult. Mike took a deep breath to steady himself. Emma, this is very important. Did you ever hear any names? People who came to see Blackwood or who worked for him? The girl thought for a moment. The mayor comes a lot, and the lady with the yellow hair who was at the hospital. Allison Carter? Kate asked with surprise. Emma nodded. She's scarier than the bad man. She's the one who decides which babies stay and which ones go away. The revelation landed like a physical blow. Allison Carter, the county prosecutor, the woman responsible for pursuing justice, was actively involved in Blackwood's operation. It explained her warnings to Mike, her quick dismissal of his concerns about the children. There's one more, Emma continued. The doctor lady. She checks the mommies and makes sure the babies are growing right. Do you remember her name? Kate asked gently. Dr. Foster. She has red glasses and doesn't smile. Mike recognized the name immediately. Elaine Foster was chief of obstetrics at Stormhaven General. She also sat on the board of the Starlight Foundation. The conspiracy was larger and reached higher than they had imagined. Mayor Wilson, Prosecutor Carter, Dr. Foster, Chief Barnes, all connected to Blackwood and all in positions to ensure his operation remained protected. We need to move fast, Mike said to Kate after Emma had finally fallen asleep. With this many powerful people involved, it won't take long for them to mobilize every resource to find us. Kate paced the small kitchen, the weight of their situation evident in her tense movements. We need proof, Mike. Concrete, irrefutable evidence that will hold up even against their influence. Winter's safe deposit box might have enough to start, but we need more. Mike ran a hand over his face, fatigue beginning to set in. Direct evidence from Cliff Haven itself. Documentation of the surrogacy operation, financial records, even DNA from the women being held there. You're talking about breaking into Blackwood's estate. The security there is legendary. I'm talking about rescuing Laura Miller and the other women. Mike's jaw set with determination. If we can get them out, get their testimony, it would be their word against Blackwood's, against a prosecutor, a mayor, a respected doctor. Kate's expression was troubled. Unless we find hard evidence, financial records, medical files, documented transfers, it won't be enough. The cabin fell silent except for the soft crackle of the fireplace and Noah's gentle breathing. Outside, the wind whispered through pine trees, a sound so unlike the crash of ocean waves against Stormhaven's shores. Mike's phone buzzed the burner Winters had provided. The text message contained only 2 words, turn on TV. He found the cabin's ancient television in a corner cabinet, switching it on and searching for a news channel. The screen flickered to life, showing Allison Carter standing at a podium with the Stormhaven Police Department insignia. Deeply concerned about the actions of Detective Michael Sullivan, who has abducted 2 minors from Stormhaven General Hospital. Detective Sullivan has been exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior since the death of his wife 2 years ago, according to colleagues. He has developed an unhealthy obsession with these children who were scheduled for placement with the Starlight Foundation today. The camera cut to a photograph of Mike in his uniform, alongside images of Emma and Noah. The chyron at the bottom read, Manhunt Detective Kidnaps Children from Hospital. We believe Detective Sullivan may be armed and should be considered dangerous. Allison continued her professional concern, masking the predator beneath. We urge anyone with information to contact authorities immediately. Our primary concern is the safety and well-being of these vulnerable children. Mike shut off the television, his expression grim. They're controlling the narrative. They've just turned half the state against us, Kate said quietly. Every police officer, every citizen with a television. They're scared. Mike's mind raced through implications. We've got something they want badly enough to risk this kind of exposure. Noah isn't just any baby. We need to run a DNA test. Kate's clinical training asserted itself. I took blood samples from both children before we left. If I can get access to a private lab, too risky. Blackwood probably has contacts throughout the medical community. Then we need someone outside the system, Someone with the resources and motivation to help us. Kate hesitated. What about your son? Doesn't he study biochemistry? The suggestion hit Mike like a physical blow. I can't involve Jason in this. Mike, we're running out of options. Everyone we know professionally is either compromised or will be watching for us. We need someone they won't suspect. The logic was sound, but the thought of dragging his son into this nightmare scenario twisted Mike's stomach. Jason had already lost his mother. Now his father was a fugitive. Involving him would put his future, possibly his life, at risk. But Kate was right. They needed help from someone outside Blackwood's sphere of influence. Mike reached for the burner phone, then hesitated. Even if Jason agreed, they'll be monitoring his phone, his email, everything. They'll expect me to contact him. So we need another way. Kate thought for a moment. What about his roommate or a friend at the university? Mike considered this, then remembered something. His girlfriend, Megan. She's not from Stormhaven. They've been dating about 6 months. I met her once at Christmas. Do you have her number? No, but I know she works at a coffee shop near campus. Bluebird Cafe. Mike checked his watch. If we leave now, we could be there by morning. We can't all go. The children need stability, and they're too recognizable now that their photos are being broadcast. The dilemma settled between them. Splitting up would be dangerous, but staying together limited their options. Finally, Mike made the decision. I'll go. You stay with Emma and Noah. You're a doctor. You know how to care for them better than I do. Kate looked like she wanted to argue, but ultimately nodded. Be careful. If they've put out an alert, every police officer in the state will be looking for you. Mike gathered what he needed for the journey: cash, the burner phone, Winter's revolver. Before leaving, he knelt beside the sofa where Emma slept. I'm going to find your mom, he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. I promise. Outside, the night had deepened, clouds obscuring the stars. Mike paused on the cabin porch, listening to the wind in the trees. In the distance, he heard the faint wail of a siren. The manhunt had begun. Kate followed him to his car. How long will you be gone? 2 days max. If I'm not back by then. He didn't finish the sentence. They both understood the implications. I'll move them somewhere else if I have to. Kate's face was half shadowed in the porch light. Mike, what we're doing is right, he finished firmly. Maybe not legal, but right. Kate stepped forward suddenly and kissed him. It was brief, but carried an intensity that caught him by surprise. That's in case I don't get another chance, she said simply. Mike held her gaze for a long moment. I'll come back. As he drove away from the cabin, Mike glanced in the rearview mirror. Kate stood illuminated in the doorway, a solitary figure against the darkness. The image stuck with him as he navigated the narrow dirt road back toward the highway. For 2 years since Rebecca's death, Mike had existed rather than lived, going through motions without purpose or connection. Now, in the midst of the most dangerous situation of his life, he felt strangely alive again. The clarity that came with absolute conviction burned away the fog of grief and guilt. He might not survive what was coming, but for the first time in years, he was certain he was exactly where he was meant to be, doing exactly what needed to be done. Miles behind him, Kate returned to the cabin's warmth, checking on the sleeping children. Noah stirred in his makeshift crib, small hands reaching upward. She gently stroked his cheek until he settled again. We'll keep you safe, she whispered. Both of you. Outside, the wind rose, carrying the distant sound of vehicles on the main road. Kate moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. Something in the night had changed, a shift in the atmosphere that raised the hair on her neck. They weren't alone in these woods anymore. She could feel it with the same certainty that she could feel her own quickening pulse. Someone was coming. Dawn stretched cold fingers across the mountain sky as Mike's car wound through the final curves toward Westlake University. His eyes burned from hours of driving, but adrenaline kept him alert. The campus would be waking now, students beginning to filter toward morning classes and coffee shops. The Bluebird Cafe sat at the edge of campus, a converted Victorian house with blue trim and a wraparound porch where students gathered at iron tables. Mike parked 2 blocks away and surveyed the area. No police vehicles, no obvious surveillance. Still, he kept his baseball cap low and sunglasses on despite the early hour. The cafe was just opening, baristas setting up behind the counter, while early risers tapped at laptops. Mike scanned the employees and found her Megan Chen, Jason's girlfriend. A petite young woman with dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail, moving efficiently between the espresso machine and counter. Mike took a seat in the corner, back to the wall, watching the door. When the initial rush subsided, he approached the counter. "Black coffee, please." Megan looked up with a customer service smile that faltered as recognition dawned. "Mr. Sullivan, I need to speak with Jason," Mike said quietly. "It's important." Her eyes darted to the television mounted in the corner, currently showing morning news with closed captions. His face hadn't appeared yet, but it would soon. "He's been trying to call you," she whispered. "Your phone goes straight to voicemail." "I can't use my regular phone." "Listen carefully, Megan. I'm in trouble, but not for the reasons they'll say on the news. I need Jason's help, but I understand if you don't want to get involved." Megan studied him for a long moment. "Jason always said you were a good man, that your problem was caring too much about strangers and not enough about family." She made a decision. "My shift ends at noon. Meet me at Riverside Park by the old boathouse. I'll bring Jason." Relief washed over Mike. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Her gaze hardened. "If you're lying, if you've done something terrible, I'll turn you in myself." Mike nodded, respecting her caution. "Fair enough." He left cash for the coffee and a generous tip, then slipped out before the cafe filled. Back in his car, he checked the burner phone. One message from Kate. "All quiet, N and E sleeping. Be careful." The hours until noon stretched interminably. Mike changed locations frequently, avoiding main roads and security cameras. He used the time to review Winter's files, piecing together the structure of Blackwood's operation. The financial trails were complex but showed a pattern of payments from wealthy clients through offshore accounts, ultimately reaching Starlight Foundation as donations. Most disturbing were the medical records, partial documentation of women's pregnancies, genetic testing of embryos, and delivery notes with no mention of the mothers afterward. The clinical detachment of these records made the horror all the more palpable. These weren't just crimes, they were systematized atrocities masquerading as charity. At 11:45, Mike arrived at Riverside Park. The old boathouse stood weathered and quiet by the water, surrounded by autumn-touched trees. He positioned himself inside with a clear view of the approach paths, the revolver a reassuring weight against his side. At precisely noon, two figures emerged from the tree line, Megan and beside her Jason. Mike's heart constricted at the sight of his son. At 21, Jason had the lean build of a distance runner and Rebecca's thoughtful eyes. His expression now was guarded uncertainty, written in every tense line of his body. Mike stepped out of the boathouse. For a moment, father and son simply regarded each other across the short distance. "Dad," Jason finally broke the silence, his voice tight with confusion and concern. "What the hell is going on? Your face is all over the news. They're saying you kidnapped children." "I did take them," Mike admitted, "but not for the reasons they're claiming." Jason's expression hardened. "So it's true you've actually lost it after everything with Mom." "Listen to me," Mike cut in, his voice steady despite the pain of his son's accusation. "Those children were about to be handed over to the people who had abused them. The little girl Emma and baby Noah were victims of a trafficking operation run by Richard Blackwood." "The philanthropist?" Megan asked skeptically. "The monster," Mike corrected. He quickly outlined what they'd discovered. The surrogacy operation the women held captive at Cliff Haven, the network of powerful people protecting Blackwood's empire. As he spoke, Jason's expression shifted from disbelief to disturbed consideration. The biochemistry student in him engaged with the genetic aspects of the operation. "Designer babies," Jason murmured, "created to specification and sold to the highest bidder." "Exactly, and Noah appears to be something special even among those children. Blackwood kept him instead of delivering him to a client." "Why are you here, Dad?" Jason asked directly. "What do you need from me?" "We need to run DNA tests on Noah, find out what makes him so valuable that they've launched a manhunt for him. And we need someone who can access university lab equipment without raising suspicion." Jason ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father's that it created an echo across generations. "You want me to use the university lab for illegal DNA testing of a kidnapped baby? Do you realize what you're asking? My entire future could be destroyed." "I know." Mike's voice roughened with emotion. "I would never have come to you if there were any other way. But there are women dying, Jason. Children being sold. and everyone who should be stopping it is involved in protecting it. A heavy silence fell. Jason turned away, staring out at the river. Megan placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "Actually, I think I do." Jason turned back to his father. "All my life I've resented how you always chose other people's problems over your family. How you were never there because you were too busy saving strangers." His eyes held Mike steadily. "I'm not going to make the same mistake. I can't turn my back on this, even if I wanted to." The knot in Mike's chest loosened slightly. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Jason's echo of Megan's earlier warning carried a hint of grim humor. "I'll help you, but I need blood samples, and I can't leave campus without attracting attention. They'll be watching for me." "I can bring them to you tonight." Jason nodded. "There's a service entrance to the science building on the east side. Security's minimal after hours. I'll meet you there at midnight." Mike hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "There's something else you should know." He handed over a folded photograph. "This is Emma's mother, Laura Miller. She's still being held at Cliff Haven along with other women." Jason studied the photo, a young woman with Emma's solemn eyes, her employee badge from the Harbor View Hotel visible. "You're going after them, aren't you?" Jason asked, already knowing the answer. "You're going to try to rescue them from Blackwood's fortress." "I have to." "That's suicide, Dad. You can't do it alone." "I won't be alone." Mike thought of Kate of Winters. "But I need to know the children will be safe no matter what happens." Understanding darkened Jason's eyes. For the first time, he seemed to truly grasp the gravity of what his father was undertaking and the likelihood that Mike might not survive it. "Let me come with you," Jason said suddenly, "to Cliff Haven. I can help." "Absolutely not." Mike's refusal was immediate and firm. "I've already risked your future enough. I won't risk your life." "It's my choice," Jason insisted. "I have skills you need. I know security systems, electronic locks. My roommate's a computer science major. He's taught me things." Jason, "Dad, listen, for once in your life, accept help from your family instead of pushing us away to protect us." The words struck deep, piercing years of carefully constructed defenses. Mike had always believed his solitary approach to danger was protection for Rebecca, for Jason, for everyone he loved. But looking at his son, now seeing the determined young man who stood ready to risk everything alongside him, he wondered if he'd been wrong all along. "We'll discuss it," he finally conceded. "After the day tests." They finalized plans for meeting at the science building, then prepared to part ways. As Jason turned to leave, Mike called after him, "Son?" When Jason looked back, Mike struggled to find adequate words. "Be careful." A ghost of a smile touched Jason's face. "Isn't that my line?" After they disappeared back through the trees, Mike remained by the boathouse watching ripples spread across the river's surface. Something fundamental had shifted between him and his son today, a bridge beginning to form across years of distance and resentment. Whether either of them would live to cross it remained to be seen. Kate knew they had been found the moment she heard the distant hum of vehicles on the access road. She moved swiftly, gathering essential supplies into a backpack formula for Noah medication for Emma Waterfood, the burner phone. Both children watched her with wide, fearful eyes. "We need to leave," she explained calmly, despite the fear clutching at her chest. "Someone's coming." "Is it the bad man?" Emma asked, already pulling on her shoes. "I don't know, sweetheart, but we're not staying to find out." The cabin had a back exit leading directly into dense forest. Kate had explored it earlier, identifying a narrow game trail that wound deeper into the mountains. Now she lifted Noah into a makeshift sling across her chest and took Emma's hand. "We're going to be very quiet, like a game," she whispered. "Follow me exactly and don't make a sound." They slipped out the back door just as the first vehicle crested the final hill to the cabin. Through the trees, Kate caught a glimpse of black SUVs with tinted windows, not police but private security, Blackwood's men. The forest closed around them, a protective canopy of pine and oak. Kate led them along the trail, moving as quickly as Emma's small legs would allow. The girl was remarkably resilient, keeping pace without complaint even as the path grew steeper. Behind them, shouts echoed from the cabin as their absence was discovered. Doors slammed, men called to each other. Then came the sound Kate had been dreading, dog barking their excited yelps, signaling the start of a hunt. "We need to hurry," she urged Emma, fighting to keep panic from her voice. They climbed higher into the mountains, the trail narrowing until it was barely visible. Noah remained mercifully quiet in his sling, lulled by the motion of Kate's careful movements. Emma's breathing grew labored, but she pressed on with determination beyond her years. The barking grew closer. These would be trained tracking dogs capable of following their scent across any terrain. Kate's mind raced through options, recalling wilderness survival techniques from her college years. They needed to mask their trail, confuse the pursuit. A small stream appeared ahead, cutting across their path. Perfect. Emma, we're going to walk in the water for a while, Kate explained. It will make it harder for them to follow us. The child nodded solemnly and stepped into the shallow current without hesitation. They followed the stream uphill for nearly half a mile before emerging onto rocky ground that would hold minimal scent. Night was falling, temperature dropping rapidly in the mountain air. Kate found a small cave formed by fallen rocks and urged Emma inside. The space was tight but offered concealment and some protection from the elements. Are we going to die? Emma asked softly as they huddled in the darkness. The directness of the question caught Kate off guard. No, sweetheart. We're just hiding until it's safe. That's what Mommy said too. Emma's voice held no accusation, just the simple observation of a child who had learned harsh truths too young. Before they took her away, Kate's throat tightened with emotion. She drew the girl closer, Noah nestled between them. Your mom is very brave, just like you are. And Detective Sullivan is going to find her, I promise. As darkness settled completely, the sounds of pursuit faded. Either the dogs had lost their trail or the searchers had temporarily pulled back for the night. Either way, Kate knew they couldn't remain in place. By morning, the search would intensify, likely with helicopters and thermal imaging. She checked the burner phone. No signal this deep in the mountains. Mike had no way of knowing their situation or location. We'll rest for a few hours, she told Emma. Then we need to keep moving. There's a town on the other side of these mountains. We can find help there. Emma nodded, her eyelids already heavy with exhaustion. Within minutes, she was asleep against Kate's shoulder. Noah slept peacefully as well, his small face illuminated by slivers of moonlight filtering through the rocks. Looking down at these children entrusted to her care, Kate felt a fierce protectiveness, unlike anything in her professional experience. These weren't just patients now. They were hers to defend whatever the cost. I won't let them take you, she whispered to their sleeping forms. Not ever. Hours later, Kate startled awake, unsure what had disturbed her rest. Emma and Noah still slept beside her. Outside, the forest was eerily silent. No wind, no night birds, no rustling creatures. The silence itself was the warning. She carefully shifted Noah into a more secure position against her chest and gently woke Emma. We need to go, she whispered, very quietly. They crept from the cave into the moonlit forest. The night had cleared, stars sharp and brilliant overhead. Kate oriented herself using the North Star and began leading them along the eastern ridge, away from the cabin and toward the distant town of East Ridge. They had covered perhaps half a mile when floodlights suddenly pierced the darkness, mounted on vehicles parked along the forestry road below. Voices carried through the night air, along with the renewed barking of dogs. Run, Kate urged, no longer concerned with silence. Run, Emma. They fled through the forest branches, whipping at their faces. Emma stumbled once, twice, but kept going with desperate determination. The lights behind them multiplied, spreading through the trees in a coordinated search pattern. Kate spotted a steep ravine ahead, too wide to jump, but offering a potential escape route. A fallen tree created a precarious bridge across the gap. Without hesitation, Kate led Emma onto the log, both of them carefully balancing above the dark void below. Halfway across, the bark beneath Emma's foot crumbled. The girl screamed, starting to fall, but Kate's hand shot out, grabbing her arm and pulling her upright. They made it to the other side just as flashlight beams swept the area they had left. They're across the ravine, a man's voice shouted. Circle around! Kate pulled Emma deeper into the forest, desperation giving her strength as she carried Noah and half-dragged the exhausted girl. They couldn't outrun vehicles and dogs much longer. They needed a hiding place or a miracle. What they found was a cliff edge dropping away into darkness. Kate stopped abruptly, holding Emma back from the precipice. Below, at least 100 feet down, lay a mountain lake, its surface black and still in the moonlight. The sounds of pursuit grew closer. Engines' voices, dogs baying for blood. They were trapped. Kate looked at the lake, then at the children. an impossible choice formed in her mind. "Emma," she said urgently, "can you swim?" The girl nodded. "Mommy taught me." Kate secured Noah more tightly against her chest and wrapped her free arm around Emma. "We're going to jump into the water. It's going to be scary and very cold, but I'll hold on to you the whole time, I promise. When we hit the water, kick your legs or help me swim." "Okay." Emma's eyes widened with fear, but she nodded bravely. "On three," Kate said, her voice steadier than she felt. "One, so 2, 3. They leaped together, suspended for a heart-stopping moment before gravity claimed them. The fall seemed endless air rushing past as the black water rushed up to meet them. They hit the lake with shocking force, cold instantly penetrating to the bone. Kate kept her promise, maintaining her grip on Emma as they submerged. Noah remained strapped securely to her chest, protected as best she could manage from the impact. Breaking the surface, Kate gasped for air, making sure Emma's head was above water. The girl sputtered but immediately began kicking, as instructed. Noah wailed, the sound echoing across the water, a terrible risk but unavoidable. Kate guided them toward the far shore, away from the cliffs and searching lights. The lake water was numbingly cold, sapping their strength with each passing minute. Emma's strokes grew weaker, her small body shivering violently. "Just a little farther," Kate encouraged. "You're doing so well, Emma. So brave." They reached the shore as shouting erupted at the cliff edge above. Flashlights swept the lake's surface, but darkness and distance concealed their waterlogged forms crawling onto the rocky bank. Kate hurried them into the shelter of pine trees, all three soaked and shivering. Noah had stopped crying, a concerning development that pushed Kate to move quickly. Hypothermia was now their greatest danger. She found a dense thicket, creating a small shelter from branches and leaves. Using her medical training, she stripped Emma's wet clothes and replaced them with a spare shirt from her backpack. For Noah, she used the emergency thermal blanket she'd packed, wrapping him tightly and holding him against her body heat. "Will they find us?" Emma asked through chattering teeth. "Not tonight," Kate assured her, though uncertainty gnawed at her confidence. "Rest now, I'll keep watch." As Emma finally succumbed to exhaustion, Kate checked Noah carefully. His breathing had stabilized, color returning to his tiny features. The thermal blanket was working. Kate looked up at the stars through gaps in the forest canopy, wondering if Mike had reached Jason yet, if he had any idea of the danger they were in. The burner phone remained dead, water damage, rendering it useless. They were on their own now, three hunted figures in a vast wilderness, with Blackwood's resources arrayed against them. Their only hope lay in reaching Eastridge before their pursuers found them, or before exposure claimed them first. Kate held the children closer, sharing what warmth her body could provide, and prepared for the longest night of her life. The University Science Building stood dark against the night sky, most windows black, except for security lighting in stairwells and hallways. Mike approached the East Service entrance at exactly midnight, staying in shadow, aware of cameras tracking the main paths. Jason was waiting as promised, his face tense, as he quickly ushered his father inside. They moved through service corridors to a small research lab in the basement. "We're off the main security grid down here," Jason explained, locking the door behind them. "This lab is used for independent research projects. No one monitors the equipment logs." The space was compact, but well-equipped: centrifuges, microscopes, computers with specialized software, and most importantly, a DNA sequencing setup. Mike removed a small cooler from his backpack. Inside were blood samples Kate had taken from both Emma and Noah before their separation. "How long will this take?" Mike asked. "Basic analysis, a few hours. Full genetic sequencing, days." Jason was already donning latex gloves. "But we'll start with the basics: blood type, genetic markers, familial matching. That should tell us if there's anything immediately unusual." As Jason began processing the samples, Mike briefed him on everything they knew so far: the surrogacy operation the women held at Cliff Haven, the powerful people involved. "Mom would never have believed this," Jason said quietly, pipetting liquid into small tubes. "She always thought you saw conspiracies where there were just ordinary crimes. Your mother was often right about me." Mike's voice softened with memory. "I did see darkness everywhere. It's the hazard of the bow. After a while, you start to expect the worst in people." "Is that why things fell apart between you two?" The directness of the question caught Mike off guard. He and Jason had never discussed the deterioration of his marriage. Partly, Mike admitted. I brought the job home. Brought the darkness with me. Your mother deserved better. Jason remained focused on his work, but his voice carried years of bottled emotion. She was going to leave you. Did you know that the revelation hung between them? Mike hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. I found out after she died. She had an appointment with a divorce lawyer scheduled for the day after the accident. Jason's hand stilled momentarily. I knew about it. She told me 2 weeks before. He looked up, meeting his father's eyes. I was angry with you then, blamed you for driving her away. But later I realized I was angry because I knew she was right to leave. The truth landed like a physical blow, but Mike didn't flinch from it. She was. I failed her. Failed you both. You're here now, Jason said simply, returning to the samples. Maybe that counts for something. The conversation lapsed as Jason concentrated on the tests, the whir of laboratory equipment filling the silence. Mike paced the small lab, checking his burner phone periodically. Still no message from Kate since the brief all quiet hours ago. Dad, look at this. Jason's voice cut through his worry. On the computer screen, genetic profiles were displayed side by side. These are preliminary results from Noah's blood. Look at the telomere patterns. What am I seeing? Mike leaned closer. Telomeres are like protective caps on our chromosomes. They naturally shorten as we age. It's part of why we grow old and eventually die. Jason pointed to specific markers on the screen. Noah's telomeres show artificial lengthening. This is cutting-edge genetic modification, Dad. The kind that theoretically could extend lifespans significantly. You're saying they created a child who will live longer. Much longer, potentially. And look at these other markers: enhanced immune function, optimized neurological development patterns. Jason's expression reflected both scientific fascination and ethical horror. This isn't just designer genetics. This is transhumanism. Creating humans with capabilities beyond normal parameters. A perfect child, Mike murmured, thinking back to Winter's files. Custom designed for extreme longevity and enhanced capabilities. Worth millions to the right buyer. Jason ran additional tests, his movements increasingly urgent. Dad, this is why Blackwood kept Noah instead of delivering him to a client. He's a prototype, possibly the first successful one of his kind. The implications for medicine, for human evolution, for profit, Mike finished grimly. What about Emma's sample? Any relation to Noah? Jason shook his head. No genetic connection, but her sample shows something else interesting. He pulled up her profile. Genetic markers suggesting above-average intelligence and sensory processing. She was likely part of an earlier generation of Blackwood's program. Less advanced, but still modified. The full scope of Blackwood's operation began to crystallize in Mike's mind, not just surrogacy and trafficking, but a systematic attempt to engineer human evolution itself, selling the results to the wealthiest clients on Earth. Children designed to be smarter, healthier, longer-lived than their natural counterparts. And somewhere at Cliff Haven, Laura Miller and other women were being used as living incubators for the next generation of these modified children. Mike's burner phone suddenly buzzed a text from Winters. They found the cabin, Kay and kids missing, B's men searching mountains, come to Lighthouse Cottage now. Cold dread washed over him. They found Kate and the children. He showed Jason the message. I need to go. Finish the analysis, save everything. This could be the evidence we need to bring down Blackwood's entire operation. I'm coming with you, Jason said, already removing his lab coat. No, you stay and finish this. It's our best shot at justice if something happens to me. Mike gripped his son's shoulder. Jason, listen. If I don't make it back, take this evidence to FBI Special Agent Marcus Turner in the Boston office. He's not connected to Stormhaven. He'll listen. Dad, promise me. Jason's jaw tightened in a gesture so like Mike's own that it created an echo across generations. I promise, but give me 24 hours to finish here, then I'm coming after you. Mike wanted to argue but recognized the same stubborn determination he himself possessed. 24 hours, not a minute sooner. As he prepared to leave, Jason stopped him with a hand on his arm. Dad, when this is over, when those kids are safe and Blackwood is finished, maybe we could try again. You and me. The simple offering pierced straight to Mike's heart. I'd like that. Then don't die. Jason's attempt at humor couldn't disguise the fear in his eyes. I mean it. Whatever happens at Cliff Haven, come back. Mike nodded, unable to make a promise he might not keep. He embraced his son briefly, then slipped out of the lab and back into the night. The connection they'd begun rebuilding would have to sustain him for what lay ahead, perhaps the most dangerous mission of his life. Samuel Winters was waiting in the lighthouse keeper's cottage oxygen tank, hissing softly beside him. Despite his failing health, the old detective had been busy. Maps and surveillance photos covered the table alongside building plans and security diagrams. They're searching the mountains west of the cabin, Winters reported without preamble. My contact in the sheriff's office says they haven't found them yet. Your doctor friend is resourceful. Mike studied the maps identifying possible routes Kate might take. She'd head for Eastridge. It's the nearest town beyond the mountains. Blackwood knows that too. He's set up roadblocks on every approach. Winters tapped a satellite image of Cliff Haven. Meanwhile, security at the estate has doubled. Whatever's happening there, he's circling the wagons. We found what makes Noah special. Mike explained what Jason had discovered about the genetic modifications. He's not just a designer baby. He's potentially the first of a new kind of human, engineered for extended lifespan and enhanced capabilities. Winter's weathered face registered understanding. Christ, no wonder Blackwood is throwing everything at finding him. The child represents billions in potential profit in decades of research. We need to get into Cliff Haven, not just for evidence. Now Laura Miller and the other women need immediate extraction. You'll never breach the perimeter conventionally, not with this level of security. Winters pulled out another map, this one older, showing the original construction of the estate. But there might be another way in. The original mansion was built in 1920 by a rum runner during Prohibition. Legend has it he constructed a secret tunnel from the sea caves below the cliffs to the house basement. Are there any records confirming this tunnel exists? Nothing official, but local fishermen have stories about boats disappearing into the cliffs during Coast Guard pursuits. Winters traced a line from the sea to the house. If the tunnel exists, it would connect here in the southeast corner of the basement level. Mike examined the route. It was a desperate plan relying on local legend and luck. But with Kate and the children in danger and time running out for the women at Cliff Haven, desperation was all they had left. I'll need diving gear, Mike said, committing to the approach. And weapons. Winters nodded toward a duffel bag in the corner. Already handled. My last contribution to justice in this town. His breath wheezed painfully. I'd come with you if I could. You've done more than enough. Mike checked the contents of the bag, diving equipment, a waterproof flashlight, and a Glock 9 number with extra magazines. If I don't make it back, your son will get the evidence to the feds. I've made arrangements. Winter's certainty was oddly comforting. One more thing. He handed Mike a small device. Tracker. Activate it once you're inside. I have a contact who can monitor your position. Mike pocketed the device, then hesitated before asking the question that had been nagging at him. You knew about Blackwood 5 years ago. Why didn't you take what you had to the FBI then? Why stay in Stormhaven after being disgraced? Winter's eyes clouded with old pain. Because my wife was still here. Because I thought I could eventually gather enough evidence to clear my name in her eyes. His voice roughened. By the time I realized the truth that Blackwood's reach extended far beyond this town, she was gone, and the cancer had started. Some battles you fight knowing you'll lose, Sullivan. You fight them anyway. The old detective's words resonated deep within Mike. Wasn't that exactly what he was doing now? Fighting against overwhelming odds. Not because victory was certain, but because surrender was unthinkable. If you make it out, Winters continued, there's a boat waiting at the North Marina. Captain's name is Reyes. He'll take you anywhere you need to go, no questions asked. Mike nodded his thanks, gathering the equipment. I should move now, under cover of darkness. Wait for the storm, Winters advised, nodding toward the window where rain had begun spattering against the glass. Weather Service is predicting a significant system moving in around midnight. Use it as cover. The seas will be rough, but the surveillance systems will be compromised. Mike checked his watch. 4 hours until midnight. Time enough to prepare and position himself for the approach. As he made final preparations, Winters watched him with knowing eyes. You're not planning to come back, are you? Mike paused in checking the diving gear. What makes you say that? Because I recognize the look. The one that says completing the mission matters more than surviving it. Winter's gaze was unflinching. I wore it myself once. My priority is getting those women out, Mike said simply. And after that, what about your son? The doctor, those children who trust you. The question struck deeper than Winters could know. For 2 years since Rebecca's death, Mike had been half living, going through motions without true purpose. The thought of sacrifice seemed almost a release, a final act of atonement for his failures as a husband, a father, a protector. But now faced with Winter's direct challenge, he realized how much had changed in the past few days. Connections rebuilt with Jason. The unexpected bond with Kate. The trust in Emma's eyes when she looked at him. For the first time in years, he had reasons to survive beyond mere duty. "I'll do what needs to be done," Mike finally answered, "and I'll try my damnedest to come back." Winter seemed satisfied with this response. "Good, because redemption isn't found in dying for a cause, Sullivan. It's found in living for the people who need you." The old detective's words accompanied Mike as he slipped out of the cottage and into the gathering storm. They echoed in his mind as he made his way toward the northern cliffs where the angry sea crashed against ancient rock in a rhythm as old as time itself. Somewhere in those waters lay an entrance to hell disguised as philanthropy, and despite the odds, despite the key, Mike Sullivan was going to tear it open. The storm arrived as predicted, waves pounding the shoreline with savage force as lightning split the sky. Mike stood at the edge of the small cove below Cliff Haven wetsuit, already donned diving gear, checked and rechecked. The security cameras that normally monitored this stretch of coastline would be virtually useless in such conditions, sensors overloaded by rain, visibility reduced to near zero. Perfect conditions for an impossible mission. He slipped into the churning water, the cold immediately penetrating despite the wetsuit's protection. The dive light cut a pale swath through darkness as Mike navigated toward the cliff base. According to Winter's information, the sea cave entrance would be approximately 50 yards south of the mansion's foundation, marked by a distinctive rock formation resembling a trident. The swim was brutal currents threatening to dash him against rocks with each surge. Mike drew on his SEAL training, working with the water rather than fighting it, using each wave's retreat to make progress. Finally, he spotted it, 3 spires of rock rising from the water like Neptune's weapon. Behind them, a dark opening gaped in the cliff face, barely visible above the waterline. Mike fought his way to the entrance, relief washing over him as he pulled himself into the relative calm of the sea cave. The dive light revealed a natural cavern stretching deep into the cliff water, giving way to a rocky shelf several yards in. He removed his diving gear, extracting the waterproof bag containing dry clothes, the Glock, and Winter's tracking device. Changing quickly, Mike activated the tracker, then consulted the rough map Winters had provided. If the Rum Runner's tunnel existed, it should connect to the cave system somewhere near the back wall. The passage was there, almost invisible unless you were looking for it, a narrow opening behind a rock outcropping, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. The tunnel beyond sloped upward, roughly hewn steps leading into darkness. Decades-old boot prints were still visible in the accumulated silt, evidence that Winter's stories had been true. Mike moved silently through the passage, counting steps, estimating distance. After approximately 300 feet, the tunnel widened into a small chamber containing something unexpected, an ancient elevator mechanism consisting of a platform and a manual crank system. Despite its age, the mechanism looked maintained, oiled parts gleaming in the flashlight beam. Someone still used this entrance. Mike tested the platform cautiously. It held his weight without creaking. The crank turned smoothly, raising the platform inch by inch. He ascended slowly, aware that any noise might alert those above. After what felt like an eternity, the platform reached a wooden ceiling. Mike found a concealed latch and carefully pushed upward. The trapdoor opened to reveal a wine cellar, rows of bottles and climate-controlled racks, the room otherwise empty. He emerged silently, closing the trapdoor behind him. According to the building plans, the main basement level should be 1 floor above. Mike found a service stairwell and ascended cautiously, ears straining for any sound of security personnel. The basement proper was clinically sterile, white walls, tiled floors, fluorescent lighting. It looked more like a hospital ward than part of a private residence. Doors lined the hallway, each with a small observation window and electronic lock. Mike approached the nearest door and peered through the window. The room beyond contained a hospital bed, medical monitoring equipment, and a young woman lying motionless, an IV drip connected to her arm. Her swollen abdomen made her condition obvious, at least 7 months pregnant. Rage burned cold in Mike's chest as he moved to the next door, finding a similar scene. And the next. 6 rooms, 6 women, all in various stages of pregnancy. The last room contained Laura Miller, Emma's mother. Unlike the others, she was awake, sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall with hollow eyes. Mike checked the hallway, confirming it was still empty, then used the electronic lockpick Winters had provided on Laura's door. The lock clicked open, and he slipped inside. Laura startled at his entrance, fear flashing across her face until she noticed the scar on his cheek. "You," she whispered, recognition dawning. "You're him, the detective, the one from the newspaper." "Michael Sullivan," he confirmed quietly. "I found Emma and Noah. They're safe." Tears filled Laura's eyes, one hand covering her mouth to stifle a sob. "She made it out, my brave girl." Her voice trembled with emotion. "I told her to find you if she ever escaped. Made her memorize your face from that article about the missing children you saved. I'm here to get you all out," Mike explained, checking the medical equipment attached to her. "Can you walk?" Laura nodded, already disconnecting her IV with practiced movements. "I've been preparing for weeks, hiding my medication, building my strength." Her eyes hardened. "Where are my children now?" Mike briefly explained about Kate and their escape from the cabin, carefully omitting his current lack of contact with them. "They're heading for safety. We'll join them once I get all of you out of here." "The others won't be as easy," Laura warned. "They're kept heavily sedated, especially the ones near delivery." "We'll manage." Mike handed her the second gun from his pack, a small .380 he'd brought as backup. "Can you use this?" Laura took the weapon with grim familiarity. "My father taught me. Before Blackwood took me, I was a hotel manager. Before that, Army Reserve." Mike felt a surge of respect for this woman who had endured captivity for months, yet maintained both her will to fight and her determination to save her children. "What's the security situation?" "Guards, cameras. 2 guards patrol this level, rotating every 15 minutes. Cameras at each end of the hallway, but they've been glitching since the storm started." Laura's information was precise, observant. "Dr. Foster usually makes rounds at midnight, checking on the late-stage pregnancies." Mike checked his watch, 11:45 p.m. "Let's move before she arrives. We'll free the others, then head for the tunnel." Together, they slipped into the hallway, Mike using the lockpick on the remaining doors, while Laura entered each room, waking the women and helping them disconnect from the monitoring equipment. Some were initially confused, sedatives clouding their minds, but the promise of freedom brought clarity to their eyes. Within 10 minutes, all 6 women were gathered in the hallway. Most could walk unassisted, though 2 required support from the others. Their conditions varied from early pregnancy to near term, but all shared the same haunted expression, the look of those who had endured unimaginable violation. "The tunnel is this way," Mike directed, leading the group toward the wine cellar. They had almost reached the stairwell when alarms suddenly blared throughout the building. Red emergency lights pulsed along the corridor. "They've discovered we're missing," one woman gasped, panic edging her voice. Mike made an instant decision. "Change of plan. Main exit's too risky now. We need somewhere to hide until I can secure another way out." Laura pointed to a service door. "Laundry chute. Leads to the ground floor utility room. From there we can reach the garage." The group hurried to the door just as voices echoed from the stairwell, security personnel responding to the alarm. Mike positioned himself to cover their retreat while Laura led the women through the service door. As the last woman disappeared down the chute, Mike prepared to follow. Footsteps pounded on the stairs, coming closer. The door burst open. 2 security guards appeared, weapons drawn. Mike fired twice, dropping the first guard with a leg wound. The second ducked back into the stairwell, shouting into his radio. Mike dove through the service door, sealing it behind him before sliding down the laundry chute. He landed in a bin of linens, the utility room mercifully empty. The women had already moved to the connecting door, Laura in the lead with her weapon ready. "Garage is through here," she whispered. The door opened to a massive 6-car garage housing Blackwood's collection of luxury vehicles. Rain pounded on the roof, the storm still raging outside. 2 SUVs and a sedan offered potential escape vehicles. Mike moved to the nearest SUV, checking for keys. "We need to split up. Too dangerous for all of you in one vehicle." As he spoke, the utility room door crashed open. Guards poured through, weapons raised. "Down!" Mike shouted, pushing the nearest women to cover behind a workbench. Gunfire erupted, bullets pinging off metal and concrete. Mike returned fire, forcing the guards to seek cover. Laura joined him, her shooting disciplined and accurate, despite months of captivity. "The sedan," Mike directed between shots. "Keys are in the ignition. Get them out of here while I hold them off." Laura hesitated, clearly torn between escape and fighting alongside him. "Go," Mike insisted. "Your daughter needs you." That decided her. Laura gathered the women, using the SUVs as cover while they made their way to the sedan. Mike provided suppressing fire, keeping the guards pinned down as the women piled into the vehicle. The garage door began to rise automatically as the sedan's engine roared to life. Laura gave Mike one last look through the windshield, a silent acknowledgement, a promise to find Emma. Then she floored the accelerator, the sedan fishtailing on the wet pavement as it shot out into the storm. Mike ducked behind an SUV as renewed gunfire focused on his position. He was trapped now, outnumbered and outgunned. But the women were free. Laura was free. The mission was accomplished. He checked his ammunition, 2 magazines remaining. Not enough to fight his way out. The guards were advancing cautiously, coordinating their movements to flank his position. Mike prepared for what would likely be his final stand when a new sound cut through the chaos. Another vehicle approaching at high speed from outside. Headlights swept across the garage interior as a truck burst through the open doors, scattering the guards. The driver's door flew open. "Dad, get in!" Jason. Mike's shock lasted only a split second before training took over. He sprinted for the truck, diving into the passenger seat as bullets shattered the rear window. "Go!" he shouted. Jason slammed the truck into reverse, backing out of the garage at dangerous speed. Bullets pinged off the chassis as they retreated, but none found human targets. Once clear of the immediate danger, Jason spun the wheel, turning the truck down the long driveway toward the main gate. "What the hell are you doing here?" Mike demanded, equal parts furious and grateful. "I told you 24 hours. "I lied," Jason replied, eyes fixed on the rain-slicked road. "You're welcome, by the way." Mike couldn't help the bark of laughter that escaped him. "How did you find me?" "Winters gave me the tracker frequency. Said you'd need backup." Jason swerved to avoid a falling tree branch. "Was that Emma's mother in the sedan?" "Laura Miller and 5 other women, all used as surrogates in Blackwood's operation." Mike checked behind them. "They're being pursued. We need to draw off the security forces." "Already planned for that." Jason reached into his jacket pocket, handing Mike a small detonator. "C4 on the main power transformer for the estate, courtesy of my roommate's engineering project." Mike stared at his son with new eyes. "Who are you?" A grim smile touched Jason's face. "Turns out I'm your son, after all." Mike pressed the detonator. Behind them, a massive explosion illuminated the night sky. The lights of Cliff Haven instantly went dark. "That should buy the women some time," Jason said, accelerating toward the main gate, "and create confusion about which direction to pursue." The gate ahead was close security personnel gathering with weapons drawn. Jason didn't slow down. "Hold on," he warned, then plowed directly into the gate at full speed. Metal screamed as the barrier gave way, the truck bursting through onto the main road beyond. Guards fired after them, but the storm and darkness made accurate targeting impossible. "Head for the marina," Mike directed. "North side, Winters has a boat waiting." Jason navigated the coastal road with surprising skill, the truck's 4-wheel drive handling the treacherous conditions. "What about Kate and the children?" "Kate would head for Eastridge if she escaped the cabin. It's our best chance of finding them." "And Blackwood?" Mike's expression hardened. He wasn't at the estate, but the evidence we gathered combined with the women's testimony will be enough to bring him down. We just need to get everyone to safety first. As they approached the marina, Mike's burner phone suddenly buzzed, an unknown number. "Sullivan." "Mike, it's Kate." Her voice was breathless, background noise suggesting she was in motion. "We're at Eastridge Hospital. Emma and Noah are safe, but we need to move again soon. Blackwood's people are everywhere." Relief washed over him. "We're heading your way. Laura Miller and the other women have escaped. They should be reaching Eastridge soon." "Oh, thank God." The emotion in Kate's voice was palpable. "Mike, the storm's getting worse. The roads to Eastridge are flooding. We'll find a way through. Stay hidden until we reach you. Be careful. And Mike, The connection cut abruptly static, replacing her voice. Mike lowered the phone concern, etching his features. We need to hurry. Jason nodded, pressing the accelerator harder as they continued toward the marina. The small boat dock appeared ahead, rain-slicked wooden piers extending into churning water. A single figure waited beside a weathered fishing boat, Captain Reyes, as Winters had promised. As they parked and approached the vessel, Mike's phone buzzed again with a message from Kate. Hospital compromised, moving to St. Mary's Church on Hill Street. Change of plan, Mike told Jason. We need to get to Eastridge immediately. Kate's on the move with the children. Captain Reyes, a weather-beaten man with eyes that had seen too much to ask questions, nodded toward the angry sea. Fastest route to Eastridge is by water. Road's probably washed out by now. Storm's bad, but my girl can handle it. Mike looked at the heaving waters, calculating risks. The boat journey would be dangerous, but possibly their only option. Let's go, he decided. As they boarded the fishing vessel, Mike cast one last glance toward the darkened silhouette of Cliff Haven on the distant cliffs. For years, evil had festered there behind a facade of philanthropy and wealth. Now its secrets were exposed, its victims free. The boat's engine rumbled to life, pushing them out into the storm-tossed bay. Mike stood at the rail, face turned into the rain, a strange sense of peace settling over him, despite the dangers still ahead. For the first time since Rebecca died, he felt fully alive, fully present in his purpose. He had faced his demons and found not redemption, but something possibly more valuable: connection. To Jason, to Kate, to Emma and Noah, to all those who needed protection in a world too often ruled by predators. Whatever came next, pursuit by Blackwood's forces, the legal consequences of his actions, the uncertain future awaiting them all, Mike Sullivan was no longer simply existing. He was living. The lighthouse beam swept across the water, a steady pulse of light in the darkness, guiding them home. 6 months after the storm that changed everything, Stormhaven's pristine shoreline gleamed under summer sunshine. The lighthouse stood tall against the clear blue sky, its beam unnecessary in daylight, but still rotating a sentinel's promise that even in darkness, a path home would always be illuminated. On the grassy bluff overlooking the beach, a white 2-story colonial house had been transformed into the lighthouse center. Its freshly painted sign depicted a beam of light stretching across troubled waters, with the words, "Finding Safe Harbor" beneath. Today, colorful balloons and ribbons adorned the entrance for its official opening ceremony. Mike Sullivan stood on the porch watching as families gathered on the lawn. His silver-streaked hair caught the sunlight, and the scar on his face seemed less pronounced when he smiled, something he did more often these days. Beside him, Kate Harrison squeezed his hand, her professional demeanor softened by the casual sundress she wore for the occasion. "Never thought I'd see this day," Mike said quietly. "Which part?" Kate asked. "The center opening, or you in a tie?" Mike laughed, adjusting the unfamiliar necktie. "Both." Across the lawn, Laura Miller sat with Emma and Noah on a picnic blanket. The months of recovery had restored color to Laura's face and light to her eyes. Emma, now 8, was animatedly showing her mother a drawing, while Noah, growing rapidly from infancy to toddlerhood, wobbled on unsteady legs nearby, reaching for butterflies with delighted giggles. Jason approached with a tray of lemonade, setting it on a nearby table. At 21, he carried himself with new confidence. His summer internship at the FBI's Genetic Research Division had been arranged by Special Agent Marcus Turner, who had led the federal investigation after receiving the evidence Jason had preserved. "Speech time, Dad," Jason reminded. "Everyone's here." Mike nodded, scanning the gathering. The 5 other women rescued from Cliff Haven had all come, some with family members who had thought them lost forever. Samuel Winters sat in a wheelchair under an oak tree, oxygen tank beside him, but determination still burning in his eyes. The doctors had given him 3 months. He was working on month 7 now, fueled by the satisfaction of seeing justice served. As Mike stepped to the podium, a hush fell over the crowd. "6 months ago, I was a broken man going through the motions of living," he began. "Then a storm brought 2 children to our shore, and with them, the chance to make a real difference." He paused, looking at Emma and Noah. "What we discovered was a network of exploitation that reached from our small town to the highest levels of power. Today, Richard Blackwood and Allison Carter await trial on multiple federal charges, along with 14 others involved in their operation." Mike didn't mention the nightmares that still woke him, sometimes the memory of the garage shootout, the desperate boat journey through the storm, the fear that he'd lost everything. Those shadows were receding day by day. The Lighthouse Center will serve as both refuge and advocate for survivors of trafficking, he continued. But more importantly, it stands as a reminder that no matter how powerful the darkness, there are always those willing to stand against it. After the ceremony, as the crowd mingled and celebrated, Mike found Laura near the cliff edge, watching Emma chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. She asks about you, Laura said without preamble. Wants to know if you'll teach her to fish like you promised. Mike smiled. Anytime she wants. Laura's expression grew serious. They found another facility, in Arizona, just like Cliff Haven. I heard Turner's team is handling it. It's not over, is it? Laura's gaze returned to her children. There are others out there. Probably, Mike acknowledged, but they've lost their protection. Their secrets are exposed. That's how it starts. As if on cue, the lighthouse beam activated in the deepening twilight, sweeping across the darkening water in steady, unwavering arcs. Later, Mike stood on the porch with Kate and Jason watching the last guests depart. The three of them formed a newfound family, forged in crisis but strengthened by choice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more survivors to help, more healing, to facilitate perhaps more battles to fight. But tonight, watching the lighthouse cast its protective beam across the waters, Mike Sullivan knew with absolute certainty that whatever storms came next, none of them would face them alone. The light would always guide them home.